Hello everyone, it's Rob here. Listen, it's YouTube. You know what to do. Hit the bell and the thumbs up, right? Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. So we all saw the footage a week or so ago now when the Israeli, we all know the story now. These airstrikes destroyed the AP and Al Jazeera offices in Gaza. It caused a little bit of an outcry. This was kind of my jokey tweet about this, just to poke fun at the way that this stuff gets covered in the media. And I kind of did a joke about the AP covering their own building being destroyed by describing it as moral and defensively destroying the offices. And that was pretty much just a silly joke that I was doing. I didn't really expect them to cover it like that. That was just kind of an offhanded comment about how the media generally engages with this stuff. That's what made it all the more insane now yesterday, where the AP, their office gets bombed. Of course, Israel comes out and says, oh yeah, of course, we only bombed it because of Hamas, just like everything. Oh, we bombed a hospital? Sorry, it was because of Hamas. We bombed a school? Hamas. We bombed a refugee camp? You guessed it, Hamas. We bombed this building full of the journalists' offices? Hamas. We had to do it because of Hamas. So they claim that's why. Then they gave the excuse. They said we showed the U.S. the smoking gun of Hamas offices in this tower. And then the next day, Blinken said he had seen no such evidence. And then so this is how the AP then responds to Israel intentionally destroying their offices, is to fire this journalist, Emily Wilder, after conservatives rallied to get her fired because she was part of a Students for Justice in Palestine in college. So this fucking college, this youth group of young conservative college campus freaks found out that she was part of this student activism, Students for Justice in Palestine in college. And AP, after Israel destroyed their own fucking offices, that's how they respond. Here's this piece in the Federalist. Associated Press brings on anti-Israel activist as news associate. Amid the Associated Press denying knowing it operated a news bureau in the same building as Hamas terrorists, the outlet recently hired an AP news associate that has participated heavily in the anti-Israel movement. Emily Wilder, a former Arizona Republic reporter and graduate of Stanford University, tweeted that she accepted a position with the AP in April. The Twitter post was dug up by the Stanford College Republicans, a group that frequently probes into former and current student political activities. Wilder's Twitter account has since been switched to private mode. This raises additional questions about the AP's reporting on the Israeli and Hamas conflict. News broke that the AP shared a since-demolished building in Gaza with Hamas. The radical group maintained a level of operations in the building. An Islamic Jihad office was also in the building. I don't see a source on that claim, but okay. Well, the source is the IDF told us, bro, so that's the source. Journalist Noah Pollack claims to have spoken with Israel Defense Forces personnel who say AP reporters had knowledge of the shared environment. So Noah Pollack, intrepid journalist Noah Pollack, spoke with IDF personnel, and they told him that the AP reporters totally knew that there was just terrorists running around that office. This is the amazing. Okay, this is the incredible paragraph here. Let's unpack this. Let's really unpack this part. Wilder led an effort on Stanford's campus to host anti-Semitic cartoonist Eli Valley. Valley frequently draws Jews in an offensive way and has depicted Nazi imagery in his work. The former Stanford student was the co-leader of Students for Justice in Palestine as well. A spokesman for the AP told the Federalist that the outlet requires employees to abstain from political activity. Anti-Semitic cartoonist Eli Valley. You know what this article seems to forget to mention, though? Is that Eli Valley and Emily Wilder, the subject of this piece, are Jewish. That gets conveniently left out of this, doesn't it? It's just, she was engaging in this kind of anti-Israel activity, and she was bringing on an anti-Semitic cartoonist, basically a Nazi, onto the college campus. At no point in this piece does it mention that the subject of the piece and Eli Valley, who they just called a fucking anti-Semite, are both prominent Jewish activists. She literally grew up in an Orthodox community. Eli Valley is not only Jewish, his dad was a rabbi. I know, and I've talked to Eli many times. And Eli is like one of the most, like, I think, principled, outspoken defender of like human rights and Palestinian human rights. Eli is someone that promotes in his work and in the work that he does, like, really important Jewish values. And I know I don't want to speak for him, but I know as someone that takes a lot of pride in having those values. And they're literally, like, they're using this now to say both Eli Valley and this reporter are anti-Semites. Like, I can't even imagine how difficult it must be to be someone like Eli Valley and has devoted so much of his career to advancing the cause of peace and to promote these really positive values, and then to have these fucking dipshits call him an anti-Semite. And this really just, like, illustrates more than anything else possibly could the ways that viewpoint, particularly from Jewish people, like, we don't want to hear about that. We don't want to hear about it, and we do hear about it, if you manage to, like, overcome the kind of firewall that we have in place to ensure that this viewpoint is, like, never articulated in any kind of mainstream way, the minute you do that, you'll then be smeared as being, like, a self-hating Jewish person or an anti-Semite. And that's the thing, the right, as much as they claim to be against identity politics, they love identity politics. Anti-Semitism and claims of anti-Semitism have been completely weaponized to advance a very specific ideological project that has nothing to do with, like, Jewish people or protecting Jewish people. Nothing whatsoever. It's being weaponized to advance a very specific and violent colonial project. This is what the Corbyn era was all about, right? No matter what happened with the Labour Party, no matter what happened with Jeremy Corbyn, all we ever heard from were from these, like, pro-Zionist viewpoints who would just frame everything as being this, like, assault on their identity and assault on their, like, safety. They were saying that, you know, Jews are going to be expelled from the UK. There's going to be some kind of new Holocaust. That was the 5 years of that in the UK. There was 5 straight years of, like, that is being the only viewpoint that you ever hear on a mainstream level from, like, Jewish people. And the Jewish people that were part of the Labour Party, the Jewish people, of which there were many, the Jewish activists that supported Corbyn, of which there were very many. Did you hear about that? Were they getting op-ed pieces in the Guardian? Were they getting, like, put on BBC, like, every single night? No. They cared so much about protecting Jewish identity and promoting Jewish values and centering Jewish voices until one of those Jewish voices would come and say, like, actually, I think Jeremy Corbyn is good and he's not anti-Semitic, and it's actually wrong to just, like, smear this person who's devoted his whole life to fighting against racism and apartheid and anti-Semitism and smear him like this, in this way. Did those voices get elevated onto British media? Did you hear from those people? No. Not one fucking word. In our discourse, we treat people like Mike Pence or Ted Cruz or Justin Trudeau. We treat their perspective as, like, more valuable on this than, like, actual Jewish people that don't agree with this project of, like, genocidal ethnic cleansing. Or Donald Trump, right? They get treated as being, like, more devout Jewish people than the actual Jewish activists that are, like, out there trying to support human rights and supporting Palestinian independence and are against Zionism and are against Israeli government. It's really, really sickening the way this happens. Israel-Palestine conflict is a prime example of how powerful the media is. Yeah, I think that's one thing we've been trying to really trying to look at over the last week or so. Not just covering the way that this current crisis is unfolding and the way that the media is covering this current crisis, but also going back through the years and looking at the way the media covered, for instance, the Great March of Return in 2018 or this 2010 Flotilla of Freedom massacre, and just going through these different events and looking at the ways that the media has covered this or not covered it, and often, like, really whitewashed the crimes of the Israeli government, and kind of continually presented this narrative that somehow the Israeli government, the ones with the billions of dollars in funding and the guns and army tanks and planes and bombs and soldiers, how they're the victim, and the Palestinians who have nothing. No army, no navy, no air force. How they're the aggressors and they're the terrorists. And that's one thing that's encouraging that I'll keep saying, is that there does seem to be a shift happening now where it is getting a little bit better. Not a lot better, but it is starting to get a little bit better. It's why the CNN interview is annoying with the Pakistani FM, and he called out Israel. Would love your thoughts on whether he was being anti-Semitic or not. Okay, I'll take a look at it. Pakistani Twitter not pleased after anti-Semitic label for FM Qureshi.
Israel is losing out. They're losing the media war despite their connections. They are losing the media war. The tide is turning.
What are their connections?
Deep pockets.
What does that mean?
Well, they're very influential people. I mean, they control media.
I mean, I would call that an anti-Semitic remark.
This is the kind of thing that it becomes difficult to parse, because you can't not point out the way that the media does have this favorable slant towards the Israeli government. When you kind of frame it like that, and you get into that Jews control the media territory, that is an anti-Semitic trope, absolutely. But there has to be a way to point that out, which is just completely, that's not controversial. That's not controversial in any way. To point out that the media is incredibly biased towards the actions of the Israeli government. I mean, that's just like a fact. That's a factual thing that's happening. Yeah, so when you talk about this, of course, it is anti-Semitic to say oh yeah, Israel controls the media. Or the Jews control the media, which is I think what you could infer from maybe that statement. But that's what I always think it's important to keep pointing out, that it's not just about Israel. It's not like Israel is the only country that enjoys this kind of treatment from the media. They do enjoy that treatment, but so does the United States, so does Canada, so does Australia. It's just Israel. That's what I keep trying to hammer on here. It's not just about Israel. It's about Israel being one piece, one cog in a global colonialist empire, which is headed by the United States. Israel is just a part of that. Israel is the foothold that the U.S.-led empire has in the Middle East. And so when you say Israel it's biased towards Israel, it's biased toward the Jews, that is not accurate, because it's biased towards this system of colonialism. The CNN is just the media arm of that colonialist apparatus. And yeah, it's okay, it's independent. It's independent from the state, which it's not. It's not. It's completely subservient to the national security establishment. You might have some differing viewpoints, but within the boundaries of the discourse that they allow, there's a very clear ideological project that CNN is a part of. And it's not a pro-Israel agenda, it's a pro-capitalism agenda, it's a pro-imperialism agenda, it's a pro-colonialism agenda, and Israel is a part of that. Yes, of course, champion Ratcatcher, but it's not anti-Semitic when right-wingers yell George Soros for everything that happens. Everything that happens, all the Black Lives Matter protests, that's all part of a Jewish conspiracy, according to these folks, and that's okay. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say that, of course, because as long as you support Israel, you can make these kind of claims. As long as you support Israel's unequivocal right to just bomb kids and hospitals and schools and stuff, then you can go out and say, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter is a Jewish conspiracy theory. Oh yeah, the refugees and the migrants coming across the border, that's a Jewish conspiracy theory, because Jews are actually trying to import refugees into the United States to dilute the white race and participate in this white replacement theory stuff. That's a mainstream idea on the right. That's a mainstream idea to think that, and it's totally okay. It's totally okay to think that, as long as you support Israel's unequivocal right to bomb kids. That's how fucking backwards this stuff is.